Hello, everyone, and welcome. I think we're going to get started now. So I just wanted to say thanks, everybody, for being with us for today's webinar on managing stress during COVID and beyond. My name is Danielle Lund, and my work at the Alumni Association focuses on digital engagement. Despite what my background indicates, I'm connecting from my home workspace today. If you would like to use a Mount Holyoke background for your virtual meetings, you can find them on our Powered By webpage. We'll provide a link in the chat box where we're going to be continuing to post opportunities like this one. Our work at the Alumni Association is all about supporting connections among the Mount Holyoke community and providing meaningful information and resources. Registered for today's session are alums from 7 different countries and 6 decades, ranging with grads from the 1960s to 2019. And so we're so glad to be with you all today. We're so happy to have Dr. Gretchen Schmelzer with us, an alum of the class of 1987, to share on this timely topic. Dr. Gretchen Schmelzer is a licensed psychologist and a trauma survivor who has worked for 25 years with the complex issues of trauma, integration, and behavior change across every level, from individuals to groups to large systems and countries. She has also been a senior consultant with Telios Leadership Institute, an international consulting firm serving leaders of Fortune 100 businesses and major not-for-profit organizations such as the United Nations. She is the founder and editor of The Trail Guide, a web mag featured on www.gretchenschmelzer.com, dedicated to healing repeated trauma, and the author of Journey Through Trauma. Dr. Schmelzer recently appeared on CNN to discuss the topic of handling stress during the coronavirus. Thanks so much for being with us, Dr. Schmelzer. I'm now going to turn things over to you. We're going to take questions at the close of the presentation. So if you have any questions throughout, just make sure to enter them in the chat box. And we'll turn it over to you now.
Great. Thanks so much, Danielle. Hi, everyone. Talking to you from Philadelphia. Behind me, you'll see moving boxes. I chose to move during the coronavirus because why not choose a global pandemic to increase your stress levels? So I feel like I'm well positioned to speak to stress today. I'm going to put on a PowerPoint that has some more information as I'm talking. So just bear with me for a second. Great. So I think I want to start with the fact that this pandemic is not your average stressor. This isn't, Calgon's not going to take you away in this scenario. This is a worldwide traumatic event that's taking—
Gretchen, I just wanted to point out we can't see the PowerPoint.
Oh, all right. Let's see. Let me try it again. Somehow, let's see.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. All right, that everyone can see, right?
Yep.
Great. So this is a worldwide traumatic event. It's taking place over a long and unknown duration, and it's affecting everyone in the world. This is unprecedented. You shouldn't know how to do this already. It's asymmetrically experienced. So there are people working on the front lines of this who are experiencing more extreme versions of it. There are people who have loved ones on the extreme ends of this. There are communities going through different points of extreme versions of this. And no one actually knows the level of danger for themselves or others. So everyone's living in a state of unknown. And I think it's important to cut ourselves some slack, as this experience is going to happen over a long haul. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And one of the things just up front I want to say is there's just a ton of unknown. And so the thing you have to do to help yourself manage that is to lean into what's known. I mean, even as simple mantras to yourself of things you know about yourself. You know where you live, if you know where you live. You know who's living with you. You know what you like. You know what you're capable of. And if you can repeat the things you do know and make them bigger than the things you don't know, it can actually hold you in the moment. This is a way we have to play with our brains. And because Mount Holyoke people tend to be the type A group, I want you just to take in, no one knows how to do this. There's no right way. There's no pandemic perfection. You can't get this right other than doing the best you can to watch out for your safety, for the safety of others, and to take good care of yourself and your work, your family and your work through this as best you can. This is an as best you can scenario. And that is a really important thing to remember, that we all have to lower our standards through this. I've talked to a lot of executives in the last week and a lot of parents in the last week, and the executives are in the work from home mode and the parents are in the work from school mode. And the truth of the matter is neither one of those scenarios is real. I mean, unless you've been working remotely for your whole career, working from home while your whole family's in the house is the moral equivalent of inviting your whole family into your workplace and imagining getting your work done. And I've been telling leaders that. And the same is true for the kids who are going to school. They're not used to learning from distance. Different kids' learning styles will connect with that and not connect with that. So we have to relax and focus on what's important. I worked in Alaska with Alaska Native elders, and one of the elders, Rita Blumenstein, who was one of the 13 Indigenous grandmothers, had a wonderful saying, which is, everything goes okay, and even if it's not okay, it's okay. And I think during these big events, these big crises, we need to lean on the wisdom of the elders who lived through very difficult times, and to know that we will get through this as best we can, and we will learn through it. We will come to understand things. We will come to appreciate things we didn't appreciate before. We may, when this is all over, keep things that we're doing now and let go of things we did before. So, it's hard to know, but everything is okay. Even if it's not okay, it's okay. So this pandemic is really a repeated trauma. It's traumatic because people are fearing for their lives and the lives of their loved ones. It's traumatic because essentially this has shattered an experience of safety in our social fabric and the way we lived our lives before. We can look at our calendars. I have been talking about them as ghost calendars. The 2020 we thought we were having. We don't feel in control of the decisions that are getting made, whether we can go out or whether our work is happening. I know a lot of people who've lost their jobs. I'm actually in some ways in that world of work that I was going to do with large groups in faraway places no longer exists. So we're all going to have to be compassionate with each other as we sort through what our futures actually look like. But it's traumatic to lose your job or your future. And the first task of managing in a crisis is stabilization. So I think that's the other thing that's kind of coming up against our understanding of work from home and online classes for our students, is that the first thing we want to do is stabilize and make sure that the people we're working with and our kids in our household and our family members are getting some solid ground underneath them. This isn't about moving forward. It's about finding solid ground. So, in understanding how this trauma is a repeated trauma, repeated trauma has three different aspects. There's what is happening, the fear, the sickness, people's family members are sick or dying. Then there's the what we're doing to protect ourselves. So, we have to come up with coping strategies. We have to come up with dealing with how we're managing under this stress. And that is a second form of trauma, because we're actually creating ways to protect ourselves that we don't usually have. And the third form of the trauma is what isn't happening. So the things we were going to do, the soccer season your kids aren't having, the visits you're not having with your mother or your father, or different people in your family. So it's not just what's happening, but these other aspects that combine together and will need to be sorted later once life has stabilized a little bit. So the other side of trauma is resilience. Now, I almost feel like I need a PSA to say that, before the pandemic, I was harping on the fact that resilience is a word that's overused, and we actually over-rely on it. In many organizations, they talk about resilience, and they talk about it as something, that we can stress people all the time and they should just be resilient. Actually, now this crisis is when this is the kind of thing we need resilience for. So it's the ability to adapt and flex with a major stressor, right? Without cracking. And not that you can't crack across a day, like that's another, just cut yourself some slack. There's going to be good hours and bad hours, I call them, across the day in this. And you'll find yourself like, whoa, I can do it. And then an hour where you think I am overwhelmed and I can feel everything. And that's, that's normal, that's healthy, that's typical grief. And that's what we're all experiencing in some ways, is the grief of living through something that we really had to, the whole world's put on hold. And it's a hard thing to hold on to. So what supports resilience? What's the core of resilience? And the first thing is purpose. These are the things you kind of gather together to help yourself. The why do I get up in the morning? What's important to me? What's my enduring passion? Sort of orient yourself about what's important. I work with tons of people all over the world, and when I ask them what their purpose and values are, they talk about their families, or they talk about wanting to make a difference, or they talk about integrity. So between purpose and values, you want to find out what's important so that you can start orienting your day off of what's important to you, and let some of the noise of things that are coming in from the outside. So if my value is my family and I'm helping my kid with online classes, what will help that kid? Not what will help them get an A, but what will help that kid, right? So you can orient off of what's important to you. And if you do that, you'll feel more grounded. And, it's beyond the scope of a 30-minute webinar to have you go through those exercises. But honestly, if you put values clarification into Google, there are some lovely exercises online that you can find, and same with purpose. So I encourage you to do that and have conversations with each other about it. Self-efficacy, for those of you who took undergrad psych, is I would boil it down to the I can do itness. And I think in a situation where we can feel out of control, tapping into my I can do itness is really important. And it tends to be pretty specific. For example, I can't use Excel spreadsheets, so I have no self-efficacy there, but I can bake pretty well, so I have high self-efficacy there. So it can be very specific. But I think in this crisis, it's also important to look at some of the processes that you have self-efficacy in. Like, I can learn new things. I can be helpful to groups of people. I can sit calmly through something hard. Look for the things that you can do so that you can remind yourself. Part of resilience is that we get stressed and we can't remember what we are good at, honestly. Our brains are the things that don't help us when we're stressed out. And so even if you wrote some of these things down, my purpose is, my values are, the things I know I can do well, having them written as a list can help you go back to them and remind yourself, and it gives you strength. And the last core of resilience is relationships. What's interesting is the old research on resilience was done, of course, like most of the research in psychology, was done on middle-aged, middle manager white men. And so a lot of the resilience looked at kind of an internal version of resilience, that it was all within. And when they expanded the research later, they really looked at the fact that resilience is both, I can find some strength inside myself. Some people do that. So I can find strength in relationships. And then the last part was something bigger than themselves, a higher power, or some belief system that actually supports resilience. So resilience doesn't always reside just inside me. It is a relationship to something as well. And our relationships provide resilience, which in this scenario is a challenge. So I think it needs to be acknowledged that this isn't a standard scenario where we can just bring all our friends to our house, because we can't do that right now. We have to be more engaged in connecting to people. We have to be more intentional to connect to people, and connect to people in a way that they feel they can connect to us. So some of our friends are texting people, some of our friends are email people, some of our friends are phone people, but this is also a huge opportunity to reach out to people and to make contact. Before last December, when everybody was very stressed with other things, lots of people I talked to were stressed because they couldn't stay connected with the people they loved. And now we're slowed down enough that you can actually do that. And I think that may be one of the silver linings, and we have to be more intentional about it. So I kind of wanted to give you an owner's manual of the stress response so that you can just be aware of what's happening. And, a lot of what I'm telling you, you've heard before, honestly. I mean, this isn't brand new science, but it's a chance to be reminded. I think the hard part about stress management and emotional intelligence is that it's simple, but not easy. And you learn it and you have to learn it again. So I think what's important about stress is that it's a response that was designed to put us into action, right? It's a very useful state, actually, when it's within limits, and it primes our body for energy. It narrows our focus so we attend to what's important. It increases our blood flow. It gets us ready to go. But it was designed for a physical, action-oriented problem in mind. So all of our physiology around stress was designed to either fight off a tiger or run away from a tiger, basically. And either way, we would have been tired. I want to highlight that there's fight, there's flight, there's freeze. And I am actually seeing freeze is when actually your brain doesn't perceive that fight or flight will work. So it's your reflexes kind of jam. And I'm seeing amongst different groups of people, going back and forth between kind of the fight flight and the freeze response in this scenario, more than I have in some other stress responses. I think partly because it's hard to know what to do. And in some other stressful situations, people can throw action at it. In this one, we're told to stay home. It's harder to throw action at it. There's a great way to understand how your brain works with stress that was created by Dan Siegel. And I'm gonna do it and you can do it at home. So pick a hand, any hand, and your arm is your spinal column, and your palm is your brain stem, and your thumb is your limbic system, and you're gonna fold it over, and your thumbnail is your amygdala, the part of your brain that perceives danger and stores your emotions. And your four fingers are your cortex, and you're gonna fold them over your thumb. So you have your cortex on top, and your nails of your middle finger and your ring finger are your prefrontal cortex. And you can see that they're connected to your cortex, to your limbic system, and to the brainstem. They connect your whole brain together. And what happens is, under severe stress, you flip your lid. And the only part of your brain that's actually working for you is your brainstem and your limbic system, and your thinking brain is offline. So part of the reason I talk about stress management is not just it's not about feeling good, although that's a nice outcome if you can get there. It's about having your whole brain available to you. Because if we let our cells get to a severe stress place, your brain isn't there for you. And then it's hard to do the things that you want to do. So how do you slow down? You slow down by either deep breathing, which is what would have happened if you fought a tiger or ran away from a tiger, and you slow down by finding a calmer brain, either deep breathing or connecting with somebody else. I want to just highlight that the breathing part of this, you know, there's been a lot of talk about mindfulness and meditation. All of those things can be helpful to get you back into your body. I think I want to say that they can also, if you're not used to being in your body or used to feeling what's going on, you might feel more anxious before you feel more relaxed. So, but deep breathing, like breathing all the way into your belly so that you can feel it. Like if you put your hand on your belly and breathe in, and then breathe out so that you push your hand out when you breathe with your belly, that's how deep it has to get. In order for, what happens is that deep diaphragmatic breathing is the only automatic relaxation response we have in our bodies. That tells our bodies to kick in the relaxation response. So if you're not deep breathing, you have to find a way. You have to initiate relaxation because your body won't do it on its own. And in terms of finding a calmer brain, any mammal will do. This is why our pets are so wonderful. So it's important to find somebody who's in a more calm state than you. Finding somebody else who's just as revved up, it's a little like eating potato chips. Like it'll taste good, it'll feel good, but it actually won't make you feel better in the long run. Our emotions are contagious. Our brains are open loops. And so you can just sit next to a calmer person and your brain will start to settle down. So sometimes when you don't know what to do and don't know what to say, as the person who's calmer, that's okay, just sit there and be with them. And that works. So for those of you who don't know how to calm down your spouse or calm down your kids, it's okay to just sit there and be with them. And you don't have to have something important to say, or you can just read a story out loud or something else. I'm not going to go into the entire model and every piece of it, but I find the emotional intelligence model a useful framework to understand where I need to pay attention to myself to find resilience. So it starts on, if you start on the left-hand side with self-awareness, the definition of self-awareness is I know what I'm thinking and feeling as it's happening. So really what I would love you to do is just wake up in the morning and shoot for some awareness. How am I today? And once you know what I'm thinking and feeling and the moment's happening, then you go down to self-management. All right, what do I need to do to bring myself into a state that's useful? And do I need to walk around the block? Do I need to talk to a friend? Do I need a hot shower? Do I need a cup of coffee? What do I need that will help me shift my state into a state that will help me be at my best in this scenario? Not my best in the world, but in this scenario. In that morning. And then also, if I know what I'm thinking and feeling, can I pay attention to other people? Do I have social awareness? Can I have empathy? Can I understand? Can I put myself in their shoes? Can I see the bigger picture, which is the organizational or community awareness? And then if you put all those three things together, then you can do more complicated things like teamwork and coaching and mentoring and influence. And for those of you who are trying to work remotely on teams, this is the extreme version of teamwork. It's way harder to feel and understand a team remotely, let alone a team remotely in crisis. So, A, cut yourself some slack. This is hard. And B, you really do have to go back into self-awareness, self-management, and social awareness and kind of tune them up like, the strings of a guitar so that you can get to a teamwork place. And I'm just going to highlight that stress and trauma impacts all four of those quadrants. And I think that's been lost for a lot of years, which is that, in a crisis, I'm likely to shut my emotions down. And that's efficient. Your brain's going to do that. Like, I can only take in so much, or I can only feel so much. I'm going to shut it down. But if I shut it down, it's going to make it harder for me to know what I need. And so that's why, I'm encouraging you to actually stay closer to your emotions if you can, because you can take care of yourself better. And I'll get to this in the next slide, but self-management narrows our window of tolerance. We get more rigid, more irritable. We don't like emotions as much. We get more rigid. You've probably seen that at home. Like, people have less flexibility with shifting something or not wanting to do something. And then we have all the stress response. And both of those, self-awareness and self-management, impact the way we can understand other people. As I said earlier, stress narrows our focus, so it's harder to see the big picture. We have a lack of understanding or trust in other people naturally if we're under stress. So now imagine all these other people who we aren't seeing all the time, right? Or we're hearing different reports from different places, but not being able to take in the whole. And if you put all those together, as I was saying earlier, you end up with the stress responses of groups, right? I'm sure you're seeing it in your world. I have to do it myself. No one can do it but me. Or, if I'm afraid of asking for help or afraid of making somebody angry, I'm not going to ask for what I need, but I can't see that person. So I can't, suss it out. So this is complicated, but it's important to understand that the stress is impacting the way people are behaving. And so the first thing you have to do, this is like the airlines, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. So get yourself as steady as you can be. Then help the people around you get steady. Whether it's with your family or whether it's in your workplace, help them get steady. Start meetings by checking in and finding out how people are doing and what they're doing to take care of themselves. Let them get solid, and then you can head toward the task, right? But you have to kind of help people, in the trauma world, it's, regulate, relate, reason. And so you have to help people get solid before you can possibly move forward. So the idea of the window of tolerance is that there's a space where we operate best. And that's different for everybody. Some people operate kind of high stress, some people operate really low stress, but you have your window and where you can roll. If somebody can change plans on you, or somebody can disappoint you or whatever, and you don't completely blow it. You roll with it. And then you can go outside your window of tolerance either way. So either you can get, in hyperarousal, kind of picture your hair standing up on end, or you can go to hypoarousal, where you just get kind of numb, like, stay on your couch, don't do anything. And the important thing to recognize here is that they require different things to come back into the center. So if your hair's standing up on end, if you're irritable, anxious, panicky, angry, you need soothing. You need whatever brings your mood and settles it. So for some of you, that's music. For some of you, it's conversation. Whatever it works for you to bring yourself to that center place. Hypoarousal, actually, you have to increase your contact with feelings, right? So in the top one, you're kind of trying to decrease it. The lower one, you're trying to increase it. You're trying to bring yourself back into a center place. So that's something to play with during this. And then, heading into the end of this, I want to say this is a high altitude climb. And what I mean by that is there's no autopilot in the current situation. I've been talking to a couple doctors who work at Children's, and even being a doctor right now, where they've overlearned their craft for years, there's nothing automatic anymore. Every procedure is different because they have to take different precautions. And there's, in some ways, our brains are used to autopilot. We're used to automatic, and when we have to go outside that, it's a lot more effort. So even basic things right now aren't easy. Remember how easy it was once to go to the food store? Not easy anymore. At altitude, you can go less far in a day. 300 feet is hard. And I think that we have to remember that nothing right now is gonna be easy. So we have to limit the hard things that we do and take this into account. So what I recommend for high altitude moments in our lives is that we create a base camp. And keep in mind that base camp on Everest is 18,000 feet. It's not an easy climb. It would be really hard to do that. So our base camp right now isn't easy. A base camp is a main encampment providing resources, shelter, and communications that serves as a starting and staging area for larger activity, right? So you need a place to go back to that feels solid, where you can acclimate, where you can repair your gear, where you can hang out with your teammates and, go over communications again. There's no way to wrap all this up into a nice bow. There's not a 3 easy steps to a pandemic. And so I really want you to understand like what it is you can do in the short term. First, mine and strengthen your resources. So as I was talking about earlier, get to know your values, your purpose again. Another thing to do with conversation you can have with your family or with your workmates or your friends is who helped me. Start populating your mind with the help that you've received over the course of your life and how it made you who you are and the strength that you've gained from those people. And first of all, you'll be reminded of all those things. And secondly, you'll be reminded that you're not alone, that those people and relationships you carry them with you. And that is a great source of strength during a really stressful time. The second thing is to manage your mood. So as we were saying earlier, things that are soothing, increasing your positive emotions, leaning into those. I'll talk about that in a second. And connecting to your body in a healthy way. Walking, yoga, just even any body scanner awareness just helps you manage your mood, and your mood is contagious. So you're creating a climate around you, and that it's really important that you manage it for yourself and your own health, and then for those around you. Prioritize what's most important. And I feel like I can't say this enough. I just want to go out on the street corner and shout it. What are the musts right now? Not the whole rest of 2020's quarterly report or your kids' school requirements. What are the musts? And limit those, and then really support everybody in being solid. And if you can get to the other things, great, but just really prioritize right now. And then the last thing is just remember, everything is new. Have conversations. I've been talking to different families. Do you know what's hardest for your husband or spouse or partner about this, or your kids? Have the rose and thorn conversation. What's good about being home all the time? What's bad about being home all the time? How do they respond to stress? Are they the person who clings during stress and you're the person who wants to disappear? Or, you guys didn't ever have to do this together before. There's no reason on earth you should know how everybody else feels, and they shouldn't have to know how you feel. You have to have the conversation. And the same is true at work. Like, what's hardest about this for people? What's easiest for this about people? And people may be like, I've wanted to work from home forever. Nobody let me. And some people are like, I totally miss going to the office every day. Like, it's going to be different. And this isn't one conversation. This is multiple conversations. This is something that's a long duration. I think it's important to recognize that it's hitting different people across the country differently, depending on how long we've been home, that, this is going on for a long time. This is likely going to be a long event regardless, economically. So, I think we have to remember that we're going to be in different places around this. So it's not one conversation. It's, where am I today? What's hard about this for me today? What's good about this for me today? And constantly checking in, and helping both your family members and your work members have some language for this. Language helps us retain the narrative. And any coherent narrative helps us not only hold it, but also learn from it. So this is just a reminder, and I wanted it in the slide deck, of the 10 forms of positivity. This is not a Pollyanna moment, but positive emotions helps our brains think better. And in the best of times, I make teams start their team meetings picking one of these and sort of going around the group saying something they're grateful for, or something that inspires them, or something that brings them joy. And I think in the worst of times, it's not nice to have, it's a must have. I think we need people tapping into these positive emotions in their own lives, and we need to hear that from other people so that we can kind of increase the positive emotions around us. And sort of lastly, I included some of these questions. I'm not going to go over them here, but you know, what I would do if we could have done this in person for a whole day is have you have conversations with each other about these different aspects of Basecamp and your strengths and routines and your values and your purpose. And what I really would recommend is, if you can, find groups of people to have these conversations. That's where some of the transformation for you will happen. That's where some strengthening can happen, and support and soothing. So, you know, you can get data from a webinar, but growth will happen in relationship. And so these are up here so that you can have these conversations later, whether on Zoom with classmates or in groups that you're in. So I really encourage you to do that. And that is, we'll stop there and take questions.
Thanks so much, Dr. Schmelzer. So much of this has resonated so well. I particularly liked your adventure, the Basecamp metaphor, being an avid adventurer myself. So we are going to open the chat box for questions. I'm going to kick off with one that I actually received ahead of time. My family, me, my husband, and my 16-year-old daughter seem to be dealing with all of this pretty well. Should we be concerned about that?
No, I know that I've heard that from a couple other people. So, you know, it's interesting. So no one comes to this a blank slate, right? So some families are coming to this actually functioning pretty well and enjoying each other's company. And in some ways, being told to take this extended time out with each other is actually a gift. And people are creating memories they didn't. Parents are glad they're not driving their kids to 1,000 practices and they're just getting to enjoy them at home. So there's nothing wrong with you if you're actually settling into this. Enjoy it. And, you know, there is a gift side to this for some people.
Thank you so much. Let's see, let me look at this. I've had a request if you could pull the question slide up while I'm delivering the
yes. Let's see.
And to answer a question that came through, yes, we are recording this and we are planning to share it after so that you can access the slides. Okay, so we have a question here. I'm wondering if you can speak to any, or I'll let you finish that first. So we're wondering if you can speak to any additional tips beyond all the wonderful resources you've provided here for healthcare providers, many of whom have trauma histories and or mental health illnesses like me, and or additional tips for folks with baseline mental health trauma histories.
Yes.
Comments about that?
It's a great question. So the people on the front line, the healthcare workers, are, you know, I've done work with first responders. And so it's really important that you see your work as dangerous as it is, and that you have to actually put some protections in place while you're at work. And then, you know, in the way that you take your protective gear off when you go home and shower, in some ways imagining that it can come off and you can kind of fall apart a little bit. I think that, you know, if we go back to the EI model in terms of thinking about previous trauma histories, you know, it's an interesting double-edged sword, because we often think of previous trauma histories or mental health issues as being a negative in a situation like this. And I think it's both a negative and a positive. I want to hold both, because we have to be more, those of us with trauma histories have to be more careful. We have to kind of protect ourselves a little bit more and be more thoughtful of this tender or raw places that are getting triggered by not feeling in control, or crazy people running the country, or whatever. And on the other hand, you have to also lean into the part of you that survived it, whatever trauma you have or whatever issues you've come through, and know that you actually know something about persistence and endurance that maybe some people who haven't been through that are learning now. So I think one thing to do is kind of journal about both the things that are getting stirred up and the things that are that you're leaning on, so that you are aware of those, and then plan in a little bit of extra time to be taking care of yourself. And I'm not talking hours, I'm talking 15 minutes where you are with yourself, talking to yourself about the dangers you're experiencing. The other thing I would say is that you really have to rely on your colleagues, the healthcare providers. Be talking to them, be using them for support in terms of the emotional side of this. Because while you're going through a crisis that you're going through, it's going to be harder for your family to understand, and it's going to be harder for you to want to even tell them what you're afraid of. And that is a perfectly reasonable demand on yourself and on them for this short period of time, or whatever the extended period of time is.
Thanks so much. Another question: how can I help my anxious college senior who is stuck home with us and far away from her college support group? Being home with us is not where she planned to be and is having a hard time adjusting.
Yeah, I've said this before. I think the group that's getting hardest hit for all of this are the teenagers and young college age adults. This does not match their developmental milestone at all. This isn't where they thought they would be. This isn't paying attention to their parents isn't what they thought they were doing. I think you need to have a conversation with your kids about what is hard, like go right at it. What's the hardest thing? What if anything is helping? How can you guys together creatively think about ways for her to stay, or your son or whoever, to stay connected to a social group? In addition to the social aspects, what else would they want to be doing right now? And to what extent can they use this time to do something that might be important to them, right? So maybe they hadn't planned to learn a language. Maybe this time they could use this time to do that, or some other skill, or join connect to a group of people they hadn't before. But I think it's going to be a series of conversations. There's no one thing that's going to make your kids, like teenage and college age kids, feel better. And I also think it's okay for them not to feel better. I mean, I think it's hard to sit with them around that, but I think it's okay to say, this is going to be, they're grieving the loss of what they had. And just the way it is when we've lost important people in our lives, it doesn't go away. It's intermittent. It's not the same every day, but they wake up every morning and realize it's true. I'm not where I wanted to be.
Thank you. I started off trying to stay hyper up to date on the news, but I realized it was making me really anxious. So I've tried to now just avoid looking up the latest news. Is avoiding things like the news that just make me anxious a good coping technique?
I would say yes. I mean, you want to stay up to date in terms of like behavior, like, am I allowed to go to the store? Am I not allowed to go to the store? You can scan. What I'm telling people is like, pick your favorite newspaper and scan the headlines if you want a basic understanding, or have somebody in your household do it and report it to you. But there's too much news. It's moving too fast. It moved into a 24-hour thing instead of an hour a day. And if whatever is making you more anxious, I would try to avoid it unless you need it to live. So that's part of the self-awareness piece. Be aware of things, the impact of things. Does social media make you more anxious? Does the news make you more anxious? Do some TV shows make you more anxious? And try to keep yourself inside your window of tolerance.
Thank you. Do you anticipate that there will be an emotional blowback when we start to reach the end of this? And what can we do to prepare for it?
That's a great question. I think that, I don't know if there'll be an emotional blowback, but I think that there will be, it'll be another experience of unknown. So I think that the best thing we can do to prepare for it is, you know, keep working on our communication skills with each other and our own awareness of ourselves, so that when we get to that place, we'll have a decent ability to navigate through it, or surf through it.
Thanks so much. I live in a 600 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment with a cat. How do I unplug from work and still have personal time, since my office, workout room, place to eat, and place to relax are now all in the same room? I resonate with that.
Oh dear, yes. You know, there's no easy answer to that. I mean, my first imagination thing is that you have different walls you look at for each of those things, so you're at least facing a different direction, or that you take you know, you can put a kind of a ritualized break in between different things. You light a candle for one thing, you put on music for another thing, that you change the setting through the other senses in your body besides visual. But I think that the other thing is to say to yourself, maybe it's what will I gain by doing everything in one place? How will I integrate in a way that I wasn't before because I was doing things separately? So maybe there's something huge to be gained by this like really difficult experience of having to do everything in a 600 square foot place that you couldn't possibly imagined.
Thank you. I'd like some suggestions for supporting people who have low emotional intelligence or self-awareness and can't identify or articulate their feelings or needs. The flip side is ideas for caring for yourself if you live with someone like this who can't offer you much support.
Yeah. When people have low EI, you know, I think that I once had a supervisor who explained that when you're trying to help people communicate, you start, and they can't, you start with the easiest form of communication, which is true or false. Like, are you hungry? True or false? So you get them to do awareness in a very small amount, and then you move up to multiple choice, and then you move into fill in the blank, and then you move into essay. And so some of it is that if you have higher emotional intelligence and you're looking at their face, you can say, it looks like you're anxious. You know, I'm just checking in. And they can say yes or no. So you're not asking them to do it, but you're helping them possibly identify. It's what we do with children, right? And so that's one way to do it. The other thing is to sort of just, if you think that they need something, like you're looking at somebody, you're like, that person could use a break. Like they're not reading their own cues. Then you can also be more directive. Like, why don't you take a break for the next 15 minutes? So that's okay. And I think if you can't get it from the people in your household, I think expecting them to grow emotional intelligence during a crisis is an unreasonable expectation. So that you're gonna have to look for that support from friends or family outside, and you're gonna need to do it in text or in Zoom calls or something, or while you're on a walk so you can rant or whatever.
Great, thanks so much. I have one last one here. My 23-year-old daughter, who lives across the country from me, doesn't seem to be too worried about COVID-19. She still goes into work and lives with 3 other people. I'm constantly talking with her about the dangers, but don't feel like I'm getting through to her. How would you recommend I approach her in a way that Gen Z would understand?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's really interesting because it's like the 23-year-olds and the 75-year-olds are in the same generation. Because I've talked to lots of people with older parents who aren't listening either. It's really hard to explain how this virus is dangerous even when you don't feel the danger. And I think that what I have been recommending is that some of the Gen Z people understand that they don't want to hurt other people. So they aren't worried for themselves, but they don't understand that their actions could harm grandparents and harm medical workers. So I've been pushing on that end, that they have essentially a civic duty to protect the doctors and nurses and hospital staff, and that their actions directly connect. But you can do what you can do, and a lot of people aren't having a lot of success convincing family members who don't understand the danger.
Okay, so it looks like we're closing in on time here, and want to just offer so much thanks for your presence with us today. I wanted to reiterate that we will be, we have a recording of today's webinar that we will be posting afterwards. You can check back on our Powered By webpage, which I know my colleague Colleen had shared the post in the chat earlier. I wanted to share that we're going to be continuing to hold webinars like this one moving forward. Tomorrow we have a sort of light event, a mystery guest M&Cs, which is posted on our Powered By page. And so we hope some of you will tune in for that moment as well. Dr. Gretchen Schmelzer, thank you so much for being with us today. And we look forward to keeping connected.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Awesome. Have a good one. Bye, everyone. Be well.